there, and welcome back to the Dukoscopy Studios here in Geneva. I'm joined today by Fabio Michienzi to discuss what is currently animating the markets. Fabio, welcome.
Jessica, thank you very much for hosting me here. I'm very pleased to be here with you today.
No problem, it's an absolute pleasure to have you back. So, what currently are the main drives that are animating the markets at the moment?
Well, Jessica, at the moment, if we simplify a little bit the macro trends, I can identify clearly four main risk drivers. And these are namely the price or cycle of commodities, what is happening in emerging markets and in China, the unemployment in Europe, and the consumptions in the United States. In my opinion, these four main risk drivers are the ones that will ultimately determine whether there will be growth or rather recession, and where we're heading towards a period of inflation or a much more worrisome period of deflation. In the past few years, we've been experiencing a dramatic increase in the levels of public debts, and this has been decided to diminish the internal revenue due to a dramatic increase in unemployment. Now, when unemployment becomes endemic, as it is the case now in several countries, of course this generates a lot of social unrest, political turmoil, and uncertainty. It's easy to witness what happened this weekend on the elections, and the clear message that was given by electors who cannot meet anymore at the end of the month. Now, everybody would think now about Greece, although I do not want to speculate and delve into discussing whether the country will default on its debt or whether there will be what is now called a Brexit. We could also discuss about the commodity cycles and why there is this lump of price that is mainly driven by a slowdown in emerging markets. Or we could even concentrate on China, that is losing its leading role in Asia, whilst India is more and more rising towards the stars. But what I really want to concentrate here today is fixed income. These are the markets that are mostly influenced by central bank actions, and we've seen there has been a lot of trials from central banks to try and jumpstart the economy, which is still lagging behind. By doing so, they flooded the market with liquidity. But I'm afraid I still do not see the world coming out of its doldrums. After 6 years of Goldilocks, where we experience easy monetary conditions and moderate growth, we're still lagging far behind. And in fact, despite these incredible liquidity excesses and also the facilities come from deep correction in oil prices, I still see the world growing below par and even receding in some macroeconomic areas, and such implying a clear standstill in the velocity of circulation of aggregate money. This is why I do not perceive any inflationary risk, but rather some very worrisome deflationary signals of which central banks, government and investors are very aware. And what investors need nowadays is a period of stability and decent yield, a recipe that I'm afraid government and central banks are failing to provide.
So how can these be linked to economic challenges such as rate hikes?
Right, this is an interesting question because in the past, even the most conventional stimulus would have meant an immediate response from the economy. So if we take the case of an interest rate cut, this would have meant a readjustment into the currency rate with beneficial effects into the level of exports coming from this country. And an increased level of exports would have meant also an increased aggregate demand with the necessity for this country to increase productions and therefore with a beneficial effect on unemployment rate. Now that we seem to head towards an impossible to stop globalization, I would say, single central bank moves are perceived as ineffective and anyway perceived as always coming too late and in too little doses. This is why there is a lack of trust from the investors towards the capability of central banks to weather the economy out of the moving sands of this never-stopping recession, and we more and more moving blindly towards uncharted territory. After having experienced the zero interest rate policy, we have now moved into negative interest rate universe with the skeptical reactions from investors. Now, in an effort to move forward and even to provide some renewed trust, even the slightest positive economic data is marketed as being a major turning point, despite of admitting that we are living in a below par era, and this era may be looming for a long time ahead. However, in every darkest cloud there is a silver lining, and this is why not all macro regions are behaving the same way. And I believe the United States are leading the way towards a tepid recovery. This is why markets believe that the Federal Reserve will be the first one to be able to raise interest rates. And whilst the European Central Bank and the Bank of Japan will keep on adding liquidity to the market and making monetary conditions easier and easier. Now, should the Federal Reserve be successful to normalize interest rate without compromising this weak recovery, we may think that normalization is happening and the worst is behind us, and this is my biggest hope.
So how can the actions of the central bank affect the fixed incomes of the universe?
Well, the actions of central banks have created massive market distortions, which affect everybody and every single sector. We may name wealth inequality, we may name monetization of fiscal imbalances, or even currency wars. But what really affects the fixed income markets is market crowding. And if we think about the European Central Bank, the European Central Bank has committed to an average purchase of 60 billion euros of sovereign bonds in the secondary market. Now, this has meant also that the net issuance on several European countries has turned negative, and everybody has dived full body into the same trade, which is buying European sovereign bonds and looking for yield in higher yielding securities. Now, this market crowding has also meant that the Bund, for example, is dealing into negative territory up to the 9-year tenures. Now, when there is this market concentration, of course, even the most liquid clusters of the investable universe have become extremely liquid due to a lack of securities. And as such, even the smallest move generates high volatility. Now, central banks are aware of this risk, because after having invited everybody to their party, they have to organize an exit strategy without creating a drama or even worse, casualties. So in Europe, we have seen that interest rates have repriced dramatically, although coming from very low yields. And after an important slide in the core as well as the peripheral of European countries, being long European rates doesn't make so much sense anymore. The risk is too high, the reward is too low. So what message can we channel to the investors today in fixed income? Well, in my opinion, it would make sense and it would be wise to reduce exposure to European sovereign bonds, and as well to reduce any exposure to third-party investments bearing fees that are close or even higher than the expected return of the underlying asset class.
Well, Fabio, thank you so much for coming in today. As always, it was a pleasure speaking to you.
Jessica, pleasure was mine, and I'm very happy I was here with you today.
Thank you. Well, that's all that we have time for today, but for further updates and interviews, do check out the Dukascopy website. Goodbye for now.